Welcome everybody, my name is Jason Werkema and I am the adjunct guitar instructor at Calvin University and have been there for a number of years. I think I started back in 2007, did that for a number of years, took a little bit of time off, and now I'm back. And so it's great to be back teaching, and I love the guitar, and I love the Lord, and I love to communicate the gospel through music. And so here I am today, and I'm talking about technique for worship leader guitar players. And so you know, one of the things I've found is that playing guitar in a worship context is not too unlike playing in the classical world or even in the jazz world. And I have pursued degrees in both of those areas, classical guitar and jazz guitar, and I have found that there's quite a bit of overlap in technique for those different styles as well as for worship. So I'm going to share with you my approach to playing a little bit of fingerstyle, and we're going to talk a little bit about some scales and some finger placement for both left and right hand, a couple exercises that I think will help you out in terms of your learning. So I hope there's a little bit of something for everybody here as sort of a recap for this session at the Calvin Worship Symposium. So one of the things that we talk about at the very beginning is just the hand placement of the right hand and the left hand. And just for starters, when I think of my left hand playing the guitar, you'll notice that my guitar is quite elevated right here. It's about eye level for me when I look out at the headstock over here. This is really important because when you sit in a good position like this to play the guitar and you bend at the elbow, you'll find that the guitar neck comes right into contact where your hand wants to be. I don't have to raise the shoulder up and I don't have to lower the shoulder down to get to that position. It just happens naturally. Okay, so what I would recommend is either use a footstool, or I've got a guitar strap on here holding this guitar up. By the way, this is called a silent guitar. It's a Yamaha guitar, and it actually has no body to it. So, but it's great for recording if you're a classical guitar player. So, good job, Yamaha. And so this is the technique position for your left arm. Just make sure the guitar is elevated a bit. And the reason that we do that is because if the guitar is lower on your right leg down here, you're going to end up bending the wrist. And this is one of the worst things that I see, is that people that play the guitar oftentimes have a bent left wrist right there. And that's going to create some tension in your hand. Things like carpal tunnel and tendonitis, things we definitely want to avoid. So if at all costs, bring the guitar higher and your hand position will be much better. You'll notice that I have sort of a straight wrist coming up to the guitar right there for playing. Okay, so that's a good position for the left hand. The right hand, I'm talking specifically here about fingerstyle. I think most of us that are into playing the guitar are comfortable with the strumming of, of chords, and that's a very, basic sort of entry point for playing the guitar. Strumming chords is a wonderful way to add rhythm to your worship leading ensemble. But fingerstyle seems to be like the next level, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. And that position right there comes from, I'm going to start with my thumb on the 4th string. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, for me it's the first wound string on my guitar. If you play acoustic, it might be the 3rd string. So my thumb sits on the 4th string, and by the way, the strings are numbered from the highest sounding string right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so the 6th string is the lowest string, the 1st string is the highest sounding, even though in relationship to the floor, it's closest to the floor, but it's the highest in terms of pitch. All right, so we're going to put our thumb on the 4th string, our index finger on the 3rd string, our middle finger on the 2nd string, and our ring finger on the 1st string. So they all line up just like this in a nice little line: thumb, index, middle, and ring. Okay, and if you need to stop the video and rewind, feel free to do so. I like to move fast and cover a lot of material, but I hope I'm not moving too quickly for us. So thumb, index, middle, and ring. So they're all sitting there just like that. Okay, and the position for playing fingerstyle, this is actually a planted chord. So I'm putting my fingers on the strings just like that, very lightly. Okay, and I'm going to go one at a time. So each finger is going to play in succession, and it looks just like this. You're going to go thumb, index, middle, and ring. Just like that. So put them all back on again. Let's try it together. Here we go. Thumb, index, middle, and ring. Notice the hand isn't bouncing around and moving around like this. It stays very stable. So I'm looking right at that top knuckle on that of my index finger, and everything stays very stable like this. Thumb, index, middle, ring. Just like that. So your reference point is your forearm against the upper part of your guitar right there, the upper bout of the guitar. All right, if you want to add some chords to this, or some, something that makes a little more sense than just playing like the open strings, D chord, if you're familiar with this, and you can just look this up on my website. By the way, most of what I'm talking about during this little session here, this condensed session, is found on my website. If you go to jasonwerkema.com, that's spelled JASONWERKEMA.com, jasonwerkema.com. You can go into the resources tab, and there's resources for electric guitar, for acoustic guitar, for jazz guitar, bass guitar, and so forth. Okay, and these are all free PDFs. I make this as a ministry to people all over the world, so I hope this is helpful for you. So there's a handout under the acoustic guitar tab that talks about basic chords. Okay, so the D chord looks just like this: index, middle, and ring finger, and you can find that right on that handout. Okay, so when I've got that chord fingered, I put my thumb, index, middle, and ring on the right hand right on, and this is what it looks like very slowly: thumb, index, middle, and ring. Okay, again, put them on one at a time. So just like that. Okay, when you put these in succession, what you get is a plant motion where the fingers plant on the string, they set on the string, and then you arpeggiate. Moment that they land on the string is not very long. It plants and then immediately they start playing. Okay, so here's what it would look like if I take this same chord progression, or this same right hand pattern, and I apply it to maybe a couple different chords. I might play a D chord, maybe I'll go to a C chord, and then maybe a G chord. Okay, here's what it would look like. Everybody's on. Go to a C chord, and then a G chord. So it looks like this. All right, and you can study that and follow along. All I'm doing is playing the bass note of the name of the chord. So if it's a G chord, I'm playing a G with my thumb. If it's a C chord, I'm playing a C with my thumb. And then I just arpeggiate using the first three strings. Okay, so that's just an example of getting set for the right hand position. And this is a really great position. You notice that my right arm is straight on with the forearm and the wrist are straight. I don't have a bend in the wrist like this. Okay, this was kind of an old school classical style years ago, but more straight on, just like that. So very, very comfortable. I should also mention that when you're stroking the strings, it's a very simple motion that looks just like this. The fingers come right back to the base of the hand. Okay, just very much like a little child. We have 3 kids, my wife and I, and when they were little, they could say, bye-bye, like this. This is the perfect motion. All the fingers move together just like that. Okay, so you can just rest your arm right at your side, and then the fingers come right straight back, right in alignment. That's the perfect stroke for playing the guitar, just like this. The fingers come right back. Whether you play it together, like this, or one at a time. Okay, for that matter, it works great for an arpeggio if you're going. Okay, it's the same motion just like this, or whether you're playing a scale. Okay, same motion, fingers come right back toward the palm just like that. Okay, so we've talked about right hand position, basic planting technique right there. We talked about some chords. And again, you can reference that basic chord handout on my website for free. If you're a little more advanced, there's also one called bar chords, and this would entail, major chords, that's minor chord, major chords, 7th chords, major 7th, all sorts of variations, half diminished, and so forth. You can find that under the bar chords handout. Okay. If you're interested in going further and you've got your basic chords down and your bar chords down, there's a whole pathway to learning about 6,000 chords if you're interested, and that's under the jazz guitar tab. And we talk about 3-note chords, 4-note chords, and then eventually extended and altered chords, both the major ones, the minor ones, and all the dominant variations. And then I walk you through a system where you could literally, if you're ready for this, 28 ways to play every chord. Okay, it seems kind of overwhelming, but if you can learn a few of those, that might be really helpful. I certainly don't expect everyone to go and learn 28 inversions of every 4-note chord that they know, but as a jazz musician, I find that really, really helpful. Okay. Alrighty, so we've talked right hand, we've talked left hand, and finger placement and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about left hand slurs, because this is one thing that's really going to help you increase your speed for your playing, but also give you really a nice, strong, and limber left hand. Okay, so these slurs look just like this. Maybe you've heard the term hammer on or pull off, hammer on, hammer off. Well, for hundreds of years, we've called them slurs. Violinists know this, horn players know this, where they keep the air going and they just push the valve down. Guitar players do just like this, where we're going to play a note. I'm going to start here at the 5th fret on the 3rd string. Okay, so with my index finger, I'm starting right here, 5th fret, 3rd string. And what I'm going to do is play that note, just like that. That happens to be the note C. Okay, and while that note is vibrating, I'm going to slur to the note directly next door to that. That would be the note C sharp. Okay, so it happens, it doesn't have to be fast, it just has to be deliberate. So you're going to go just like this. Take a listen. Hear that? So I'm not restriking with the right hand. The left hand is doing the heavy lifting here. It's doing the work. I shouldn't say heavy lifting. I don't even like that term. It's using the energy to get another note out of this. So we play the note, we slur. Okay, play the note, slur. Now there's a couple things that are happening there. When you push that middle finger onto the string, the index finger needs to relax, because you don't want 100% and then 200% tension on your hand when you're pushing down. As soon as you get up to that next note, the index finger can release. So here's what it looks like in slow motion. You're going to go just like this. Index, play it, move to the middle finger, it goes on, and you lift the index finger. Okay, so again, slowly play, slur, just like that. Play, slur. So all I'm doing again is getting a little bit of a running start here. I would say that's about 1.5 inches or so, and then my middle finger rather comes right into that string, right up against the fretboard. Okay, right up against the fret, and the index finger releases the energy. Okay, so it looks just like this. Okay, now you can do this in different areas of the fretboard. I could do it higher. You can do this on all strings. Okay, so you're basically getting, it's like a coupon. You buy one, you get one. Okay, so you play the note, and then you get another note by slurring to it. Now you can do different finger combinations rather than just 1 to 2. You could do 1 to 3. What would that look like? We would play 1st finger, and I would slur to the 3rd finger, number 3 finger on the left hand. So 1, 3. Again, play the low note, move quickly with the left hand, right up against the fret and right straight in. You can see how steep my finger is coming in there as well. I'm not coming in flat, I'm coming right up on the tip of that finger. Okay, so it looks just like this. 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. Think of like a diving board. You jump down on it and then it springs you up. You're playing down and then spring up on the next note. Dee-yong, dee-yong. So make the energy move toward the slurred note. Okay, and that will help you to get a good sound out of it. So here's what it might sound if I do several in a row. Okay. All right, so that's 1 to 3. You could do 1 to 4 to get pretty good at this. You could do combinations, maybe 2 to 4. Okay, and then again, you can play this anywhere on the fretboard. You can play it up high, or down low. Okay, and eventually, and this is sometime after you get the coordination of moving these pretty well in command, you can do them ascending and then the descending. We should probably talk about that first, and then I'll show you what it might look like in a context of a phrase. Okay, so descending slurs would look like this. I would take my 2nd finger, my middle finger, my left hand, put it on the note, and then put my index finger also on the string. Now, I'm pulling through when I come off of this string. I'm going to play the middle finger like this. Middle finger is being fingered right here. Okay, play that, slur down, and as I slur down, I'm catching the string beneath it, the finger is caught on that string on purpose. See that right there? So down, and as that finger comes down, my index finger goes slightly up. So it's this sort of motion. Middle finger comes down, index finger goes up. Okay, and that's going to give you a slur, a descending slur. Sounds like this. It's a little bit trickier. I know it would probably be easier if we were doing this one-on-one with a lesson and I could work with your fingers a little bit, but I think you're going to get the idea. Descending, down, okay, goes down. So ascending is play the note, go up. Descending would be play the upper note, and then down to the second string there, and it catches that finger. I don't just lift off, because that sound would be like this. Just not real full. We want to get that pluck sound. See how much better that sounds? Okay. So work with that a little bit, see what you come up with. That would be descending slurs. Okay, if I put this together, I'm going to play a portion of a, let's see here, like a C major scale, but I'm going to start it on an E. So it's actually an E Phrygian scale. You don't need to know that theory right now, but here's what it would sound like. Played all the basic notes. It's like running my finger up and down the piano, all the white keys like this on the keyboard, and I'm starting on the note E. Okay, so no black keys, just the white keys, and I'm going right up and right down, and I'm using a slur for each one of those. I pluck the string one time and I get some notes out of it. Take a listen. Okay, so slurs are a really wonderful way to give you more what do I want to say? Not just speed, but it gives you some velocity as well. It helps you to have a direction and the speed combined with that. So if I put this into a piece of music, you might have, or maybe you've heard, or, okay. And eventually you could take your scales. You're slurring those scales rather than, you know, plucking all the notes. Okay, so that's slurs. We can talk more about that later, but there's a handout also, and this is on most of those resource pages for free there as well. So jazz guitar, classical, and the acoustic guitar tab under jasonwerkema.com. You can check those out, and you'll find a whole handout on slurs. Okay, finger placement, slurs. Let's move on to this G scale that I just talked about, a G major scale. And this is under the Jazz Guitar tab under jasonwerkema.com. You'll see that there's a handout that says 5 major scales. Okay? Now, the 5 major scales, you don't have to worry about all 5 of them. Just work on the root position one. Okay? And the root position, root means it's the first note of the scale. Okay? So if I'm playing a G major scale, going on like this, G would be the root, and they call that the root because it matches the key signature. So this is the key of G major, which happens to have 1 sharp in it. Okay, it's pretty popular for worship songs. Okay, G major, and G is the starting note for that scale right there. Okay, I should probably add, just for those of you that are a little bit more advanced, when I actually think of my scales as a jazz guitar player, here's that little influence of jazz playing. I don't think of my scales necessarily as starting points and ending points. I think about my scales as a group of notes that I can pull from to create some melodies. Okay, so my solos when I play jazz don't always sound like this. That would be a pretty boring solo right there, but it gives you an idea. These are all the notes of a G major scale. Now, what's beautiful about practicing scales, and some people may or may not like practicing scales, I happen to like practicing scales, and here's why. When you practice a scale, you're basically practicing all the melodies in the major key, at least if this is a major scale. I'm practicing all my melodies for major songs in one systematic way. I happen to be doing it stepwise by playing note to note to note all the way through like this. Now, hidden within that linear set of notes are all sorts of melodies hiding in there. So let me just play a couple of these that fall within the key of G major. For example, we have, see, what would be a... Okay, recognize that? Right, Amazing Grace. that's within the scale of G major. How about this one? Okay, this would be Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or maybe okay, Jingle Bells. Okay, I think you get the idea. Hiding within that major scale are a lot of different melodies. Okay. Matt Redman's 10,000 Reasons. So there's a couple more examples. All right, so this G major scale is on the acoustic, electric, and fingerstyle page right there, and you can look up 5 major scales. And we're going to start on the root position one right here. And this one starts on a G, and it starts on your 2nd finger. Okay, now you'll see a bunch of little dots on the fretboard. That is a movable shape. Okay, a movable shape that you can start down low, you can play it up high. It's the same finger sequence as you go through this. Okay. And we're starting with G, and I happen to be starting on the G, which is on the 3rd fret on the 6th string right there. Okay? So this scale would look like this, and in the right hand for fingerstyle, I'm playing it with my index and middle finger down here. You could also use a pick if you've got a guitar pick. You could play this using downstroke or using upstroke. It works just fine. Okay? So very slowly, here's what it would look like. You can play right along with me if you've got the handout in front of you. You would go G, A, B, the note C, D, E, F sharp, G. And again, the fingering is 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Okay, now I just did half of it right there. There are more notes to be played. And when I call out 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, I'm talking about the left hand fingerings. My fingers are called 1, 2, 3, and 4 right there. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if we start on our 2nd, we go 2 to 4th, which is my pinky. 1 is index. Okay, 2 is middle. Pinky is 4th. Index is 1st. 3rd finger is, of course, number 3 there, ring finger, and then pinky is number 4. Okay, and you can continue this. You can see that shape continues on that handout, and it looks just like this, very slowly. Continuing on. Now I just played not just 1 octave, which is 8 notes, but I played all the way through the 2-octave G major scale. Okay. You'll also notice at the very top of that fingering, there's a high A. Okay, it's in the position of this G major scale. So I'm going to play that. Again, it's not necessarily the starting note and the ending note that I'm concerned about. It's a group of notes that I can use to improvise with. Okay, so as a jazz guitar player, that is. Okay. That's a G major scale. So highly recommend that you learn at least one of those 5 fingerings. If you really want to go after it and tackle them all, you could do all of those different fingerings. I don't have time in this video to show you all of those, but there are other fingerings that you can play. So when you're playing up high, okay, you got a G major scale there. You can play one in the middle here. Okay, up and up, down, up higher and down low. You've got other fingerings. Okay, a lot of different variations of that same group of notes of G to G with an F sharp. Okay, so there is some information on the G major scale. Let's wrap up here with just a minute on how to memorize the fretboard, because this is a question that I get often. And when I think of memorizing the fretboard, a lot of players just kind of get overwhelmed with how do I memorize all of these frets. On this guitar, I actually have 19 frets and 6 strings. So you do the math, it's a lot. It's a lot of notes, okay? And it's not quite like the piano where you look at it and you can gauge between the black keys or the white keys, where, you know, this is a C, this is a D, and an E, and so forth. And then it repeats either down or up the octave on the guitar. It gets a little more confusing. Now, you'll notice that on the front of this guitar, there's no dots available, but on the side of my guitar, I've got, if you can even see it, there's a number of little dots that indicate what the fret number is. Usually on acoustic guitars, electric guitars, and even some classical guitars, you'll see that there's a dot on the 3rd fret, the 5th fret, 7th fret, and the 9th fret. Okay, and then of course there's 2 dots at the 12th fret, and that means you've reached the octave, which means 12 notes 12 chromatic notes above the starting note. So if I have an open E on the bass string, I go up 12 notes chromatically, and I've got myself the octave above that, the E. Does that make sense? So these 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th frets are reference points for us. Okay, so if I have to play a G major or the note G on the bass string, it's going to be 3rd fret. If I go up to an A, that's going to be the 5th fret. Here's a B on the 7th fret, and then I'm going to skip the C and go up to C sharp. That's going to be the 9th fret, and the next dot I see is at the 12th fret. Okay, so why do I bring that up? Well, it's good to know the 3, 5, 7, and 9 are all odd numbers, but between those you have 2 just to the left of 3, 4 just above the 3, right? 6 just between 5 and 6, or 5 and 7, 8, and of course 10 and 11 are sort of sandwiched up here just beneath the 12th fret. So you can use these fret markings as little guides, little landmarks on the fretboard to help you figure out where you're at. Okay, so that's what those dots are for. Sometimes they're in the front, sometimes they're quite decorative. On my classical, I actually don't have any up front, but they're on the top, like I said. So here's the system I would use for memorizing. And it's much like when you're a child. If you had, at least in my era, flashcards, and they would do this of math problems, you know, like 2 times 2 is 4, or, you know, 2 plus 3 is 5, you know, these little cards, and it would have the question on the one side, and you'd flip it over, and it would tell you what the answer is on the back side. We even do this in a digital version. You know, you have this study blue that you can go to, and you can create these little guides to help you learn different repetitious things. Even if you're learning a new language, you can actually have what it looks like, and then the pronunciation on the back, and what it means, and so forth. On the guitar, what I'm going to recommend is that you start with the open strings. Okay, so here's what it would look like, and if you go to the jazz or classical guitar tab, again on my website, jasonwerkema.com, you can go to flashcards, and you'll see it starts with the open strings. And on the open strings, you would have an open E, an A, a D, a G, a B, and an E. All right? So E, A, D, G, B, and E. Now it lists them with the letter names underneath the note where those notes fall on the staff. So when I say the letter name E, I see that that note is actually 3 ledger lines underneath the treble clef staff. It's actually 3 ledger lines and then the space beneath that. If I play an A, it's 2 ledger lines right on the line beneath the treble clef staff. Okay, D is going to be that space just beneath my treble clef staff. If you think about the treble clef notes, you have E, G, B, D, and F, right? And then the spaces would be F, A, C, and E. Remember that? It spells face. Sometimes people remember these by little, you know, devices, you know, phrases like, you know, empty garbage before dad flips for E, G, B, D, F, or every good boy deserves fudge, or, you know, some sort of a reference point like that. I kind of like the empty garbage before dad flips. So yeah, now if I miss the garbage, it's on me because my kids are all grown and out of the house. But you can remember those lines just like that. Okay, so where were we at? D is just beneath the treble clef. G, this note right here, is actually on the second line on the treble clef staff. B is right in the middle of that treble clef staff, and high E is the top space. Remember, the spaces are F, A, C, and E. This would be that E right toward the top of the treble clef. All right, so what I'd like you to do is memorize E, A, D, G, B, and E. Okay, and let that be step 1. This could be day 1. Just memorize those notes, do them up, do them down, skip around, E, D, A, G, and so forth, just so you really know those notes. Be able to do this away from the guitar. This is something you can practice away from your instrument. Okay, and what you're going to do then is, once you've got that mastered, the open strings, everything moves up chromatically, as in 1/2 step. So if I go up from an E, first fret is going to be the note F. Okay, and if you recall, the 5th string was A. If I go up a 1/2 step above an A, it's going to give me B flat. Go up a 1/2 step above a D. Now here you can either call it a D sharp or an E flat. Okay, so that's both notes right there. And this, by the way, was B flat or A sharp. This is E flat or D sharp. Take a G and raise it a 1/2 step. What do you get? You get a G sharp. Raise the B up a 1/2 step, goes up to a C. Okay, and then raise an E up a 1/2 step, and it goes to an F. Remember, your natural half steps are B to C. There's no half step in between there. It's B to C is the half step, and then E to F. Those are natural half steps. And you can see those on the piano. There's no key that falls in between there. There's no black key that falls in between those two notes. Okay, so once you've got the first fret going, you can memorize that and where those notes are placed on the staff. Go to the next fret. You would have an F sharp, a B, an E, A, C sharp or D flat, and F sharp or G flat. All right. Now, if I were you, what I would do is memorize. If you're a jazz guitar player and you're playing with a lot of saxophone players or trumpet players, you know, horn players, I would memorize the entire fretboard with flats, except for the note F sharp. What I mean by that is I would call it a B flat, an E flat, an A flat, a D flat, a G flat. You know, those types of notes. I said G flat. You probably would call that an F sharp, because most of the songs we play are going to be in flat keys. If you're a classical player or a worship leader and want to play, you're going to be playing in the keys of G and C and D and E and those types of keys, rather than like B flat and A flat and G flat and, you know, keys that have a lot of flats. So same thing for orchestra. If you play violin or viola, you're going to want to read in more sharp keys. So what I would do if I was a classical guitar player or worship leader, I might memorize the fretboard in terms of sharps, and then maybe use the note B flat, because you're going to see it more often as a B flat than an A sharp. So what I'm trying to do is get you thinking about the type of music that you play in your genre, and what you're going to see more of. More sharps if you're a worship leader, less flats. If you're a jazz player, you play more flats and less sharps. Okay, I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But what I've done is memorize the entire fretboard, and you just take this one fret at a time like this. That is the magic. And just take your time with it and don't move on until you've learned the previous fret. Pretty soon, you know, maybe take a week on the first fret or two. Okay, then add another week and give yourself some time to process. Say them, play them, sing them, anything you can do that you're watching, you're playing, you're feeling it, you're hearing it. Lots of ways of learning going on. And pretty soon you'll have these things, like if you were to ask me, like, where are all the G's on my guitar? I play a G here, there's a G in the 3rd fret, G here, there's a G at the, what is this, 8th fret, I've got a G at the 10th fret, G at the 12th fret, G at the 15th fret, down here, way up at the 17th fret. No, that's 15th fret. Sorry, I can't count. No, that's right. What? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's our G. All right. Somebody needs to learn how to count. I hope this has been helpful for you. Memorizing the fretboard, learning to play some scales, putting some finger things together in terms of slurs, getting some chord shapes and this sort of thing happening. And if you want to check out my YouTube channel, there's, I don't know, 75 to 100 videos that I have on there about different pieces that I've played both in the jazz and the classical area. And feel free to write me on my website. Just go to the contact page. Feel free to write me, and I'll be happy to respond if you have any questions as you go forward. But it's been a pleasure working with you sort of through the video here, but I hope it was helpful. And thank you so much for checking this out.